HOA, Karen pointed a gun at my 9-year-old little daughter. Over HOA fees. I made sure she sleeps in prison. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is one you won't forget. The day my little girl stared down the barrel of a neighbor's gun, I realized this wasn't just about HOA fees anymore, it was about survival. One second, she was crouched on the driveway, sketching flowers with chalk in the warm sunlight. The next, a shadow loomed over her, and when she looked up, it wasn't the smile of a kind neighbor she found, it was the cold steel of a pistol trembling in Karen's hand. Time stopped. My heart slammed against my ribs as every instinct screamed to shield my daughter. But in that frozen instant, all I could think was, how did it come to this? How did unpaid HOA dues turn into a threat on my child's life? Karen's voice cracked through the silence, shrill and venomous. You think you're above the rules? You pay what you owe or you're out. Starting with her. She gestured with the gun, and the sheer insanity of her words twisted my stomach. My daughter's tiny frame shook, her chalk falling soundlessly to the pavement. She was 9 years old. 9. And this was the nightmare etched into her memory forever. What would you do if the very person entrusted with enforcing order in your neighborhood decided terror was the answer? If the same neighbor who preached about trimmed hedges and HOA bylaws used fear and violence to enforce her will? I can still hear the gasps of the neighbors gathering on the sidewalks. I can still see the police lights reflecting against manicured lawns, hear the wail of sirens ripping through the evening air, and feel the cold fury that rose in me when the officers seemed to hesitate, unsure if Karen's actions were just a misunderstanding. But make no mistake, there was no misunderstanding. My daughter had been threatened, a community had been poisoned, and Karen, the woman who thought she could control us all with fines, lies, and intimidation, was about to learn what happens when you cross the line from petty tyrant to criminal. Before I tell you how Karen ended up sleeping in a prison cell, you need to know how this nightmare started. When we first moved into Willow Creek Estates, it felt like a dream. Rows of identical homes lined the streets, their lawns clipped to perfection, and children pedaled their bikes in little circles under the soft glow of street lamps. I told myself this was the kind of place where my daughter could grow up safe, away from the chaos of city life. For a while, it was true. Our house wasn't the biggest on the block, but it was ours. Every Saturday morning, I'd mow the grass while my daughter played hopscotch in the driveway. My wife hung flower baskets under the front porch, their balloons spilling down in a cascade of color. It was normal. It was peaceful. And for a man who'd worked every overtime shift just to afford the mortgage, it was enough. But peace has a fragile shelf life, especially when there's someone determined to break it. For Willow Creek, that someone was Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of the homeowners association. Blonde hair sprayed into place like a helmet, oversized sunglasses hiding eyes that missed nothing, and a voice that carried across the cul-de-sac even when she whispered. Her power didn't come from kindness or respect. It came from fear. The first time she approached me, it was over a trash can. I'd left it on the curb too long after pickup. She appeared at my door, clipboard in hand, lips pursed as if I'd committed a felony. "We have standards here," she said, her tone dripping with superiority. I laughed it off at the time, thinking it was just neighborly fussiness. But I would learn quickly. Karen never laughed anything off. She thrived on catching people in the smallest mistakes: grass too high, cars parked at the wrong angle, porch light too dim. Every interaction came with the same condescending tone, the same thin smile that told you she wasn't just reminding you of the rules, she was warning you. Still, I tried to keep my head down. I paid the dues, waved politely when she passed, and told my daughter to ignore the way Karen scowled whenever kids left chalk marks on the sidewalk. My wife hated her instantly, but I kept saying, let it go. We're not here to make enemies. But even as I said it, something about Karen unsettled me. The way she lingered outside houses at night, jotting down notes in her little book. The way she spoke at HOA meetings, as if she owned not just the neighborhood but the people in it. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. Karen wasn't just a stickler for rules. She was a woman obsessed with control. And obsession unchecked always escalates. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I watched my daughter wave at Karen from the driveway. She was just being polite, the way kids are taught to be. Karen didn't wave back. She didn't even smile. She just stood there, staring, as if my child had broken some unspoken law. It was subtle, almost nothing. But in my gut, a chill ran through me. I shook it off. Don't be paranoid. I told myself. It's just a neighbor. Just an HOA president with too much time on her hands. If only I had trusted that instinct sooner. Because that look, that tiny moment of disdain, was the first crack in the facade. And behind it lay something darker, something that would shatter the illusion of safety I'd worked my whole life to give my daughter. At the time, I thought it was harmless nagging. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started on a Saturday evening in June, the kind of night that begged for a backyard barbecue. I fired up the grill, the scent of marinated chicken drifting across the fence line while my daughter chased fireflies with the neighbor's kids. For once, life felt normal again. Laughter filled the air, country music played low from a Bluetooth speaker, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we were settling in. Then Karen arrived. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She marched right through the open side gate, heels clicking against the patio stone like a judge entering court, clipboard in one hand, manila envelope in the other. She cut through the warm laughter with her icy presence. The kids froze. My wife stiffened. I felt my stomach knot. "Mr. Miller," she announced, voice pitched high enough for the whole block to hear. "Do you intend to ignore the repeated notices from the Homeowners Association?" I blinked, spatula still in hand. "Evening, Karen. We're in the middle of dinner. Can this wait until Monday?" Her sunglasses caught the glow of the porch light, reflecting back a distorted image of me, like I was the one on trial. "No, it cannot wait. You are 90 days overdue on your HOA fees. That is grounds for fines, liens, and potential foreclosure. Consider this your final warning." Murmurs rippled through the guests. A couple of neighbors shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in, eager for the spectacle. Karen knew exactly what she was doing. Humiliation as punishment. I set the spatula down and kept my tone even. "I already mailed the check. It cleared last week." Karen smirked, shaking her head as if talking to a child. "Then perhaps you should take it up with your bank. Until the association receives confirmation, you are delinquent. And delinquent homeowners," she paused for dramatic effect, "do not get to freeload while others pay their fair share." My daughter tugged at my shirt, her small voice trembling. "Daddy, are we going to lose the house?" My chest tightened. That was Karen's victory. Not the fines, not the threats, but the fear she planted in my child's heart. I crouched down, forcing a smile for my daughter, even as anger boiled inside me. "No, sweetheart. No one's taking our house." Then I stood, turning back to Karen. "We're done here. Please leave my property." But Karen didn't move. She raised the manila envelope like a sword. "You'll find the itemized violations inside. Trash cans left out, unapproved lawn furniture, a basketball hoop visible from the street. Every infraction adds up." Her voice carried down the block, echoing against the quiet houses. Porch lights flicked on. Curtains shifted. Karen wasn't just confronting me. She was performing for an audience. My wife snapped. "That's enough, Karen. You're scaring the kids." Karen's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Perhaps you should have considered that before ignoring the rules." The envelope dropped at my feet, scattering papers across the patio like shards of glass. Karen turned sharply, striding back through the gate with the certainty of someone who believed she had won. Silence hung heavy in her wake. The smell of grilled chicken turned bitter in my throat. I bent to gather the papers, each one stamped with red ink. Notice. Violation. Delinquent. Neighbors avoided my eyes, pretending to check their phones or herd their kids home. No one wanted to cross Karen. That was her power. Divide intimidate, conquer. Later that night, after we tucked our daughter into bed, my wife slammed the stack of notices on the kitchen table. "This is harassment," she hissed. "She can't just make up rules to humiliate us." I rubbed my temples, exhaustion weighing heavy. "I'll talk to the board. I'll straighten this out." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't just about paperwork. Karen had crossed a line tonight. She had dragged my family's name through the dirt in front of the whole neighborhood, and she had scared my daughter into thinking we'd lose the home we'd built. I couldn't shake the image of her standing over us, voice sharp, eyes gleaming with the thrill of control. This wasn't about dues or bylaws. It was about power, and Karen would do anything to keep it. The barbecue ended in uneasy silence. Guests slipped away with awkward smiles, avoiding words of comfort they were too afraid to give. By the time the last car pulled out of the cul-de-sac, the night felt hollow, poisoned. As I stood in the dark kitchen, staring at the crumpled notices on the table, my wife's words echoed in my head. "This is harassment." She was right, and I had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Because the next time Karen came after us, it wouldn't just be with papers. It would be with something far more dangerous. The morning after the barbecue felt different. The sun rose the same, the sprinklers clicked on the same, but there was a new weight in the air, an invisible pressure hanging over the cul-de-sac. When I stepped outside to grab the paper, I felt eyes on me. Curtains fluttered closed. A neighbor waved half-heartedly before retreating back inside. Karen had done her work. The seed of doubt was planted. At first, it was small things. A notice slipped under my door, claiming my grass exceeded regulation height, though I'd mowed just 2 days earlier. A warning about unauthorized exterior decorations, meaning the flower baskets my wife had hung on the porch. Even a photo taped to my mailbox of my car parked slightly crooked, circled in red marker like evidence in a crime. Each notice carried the same tone. Hostile, accusatory, dripping with superiority. And each one chipped away at my family's sense of peace. My wife tried to ignore it, but I saw the frustration in her clenched jaw, the way she snapped at little things. My daughter stopped riding her bike outside. Every time she saw Karen's white SUV crawl down the street, she ran back inside, eyes wide with fear. That was when I realized this wasn't just about control. This was psychological warfare. By the end of the week, Karen escalated further. I found a bold, block-lettered note taped to my windshield, "Pay or else." No signature, no official letterhead, just 3 words that turned my stomach cold. I crumpled the note in my fist, scanning the street. A few houses down, Karen stood in her yard, pruning roses. She didn't look at me, but I knew she was watching. That night, I called the HOA office to dispute the fines. The receptionist hesitated, then whispered into the phone, "Look, off the record, you're not the first family she's done this to, but no one's willing to stand up to her." My pulse quickened. "Why not?" "Because she'll destroy you," the woman said. "She knows every loophole, every bylaw. And if she can't get you legally, she'll get you socially." People are terrified. The line went dead, and with it, my last hope that this was just a misunderstanding. Within days, the gossip started. At the corner store, I overheard 2 neighbors whispering about how I refused to pay dues. At the park, another parent gave me a cold smile and said, "Maybe if you just followed the rules, things wouldn't be so hard." Karen was poisoning the well, turning decent people into her soldiers, all under the guise of protecting property values. My wife begged me to confront her directly, but I knew better. Karen thrived on confrontation. If I charged at her without proof, she'd twist it into another weapon. So I waited. I documented. I snapped photos of her SUV parked at odd hours, headlights sweeping across our windows. I saved every notice, every letter, every petty accusation. The evidence was piling up. But the more I pushed back in silence, the bolder Karen became. It was nearly midnight when I saw her for the first time. She stood at the edge of our driveway, flashlight in hand, scribbling into her clipboard. The beam danced over my flower beds, my porch, even the chalk drawings still faintly visible on the sidewalk. I stepped onto the porch. Karen, what the hell are you doing? She didn't flinch. Conducting an inspection. At midnight, the HOA reserves the right to monitor compliance at any hour. Her tone was flat, rehearsed, but her eyes glittered with satisfaction. You're trespassing, I said. My voice shook not from fear, but from the fury of watching her violate the one safe space I had left. Karen tilted her head, as if daring me to act. File a complaint if you wish. But remember, violations can affect your standing with the association. With that, she clicked off the flashlight and drifted into the shadows, leaving me seething on the porch. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did my wife. The walls of our home felt thinner, weaker, as though Karen's presence seeped through the cracks. The final straw came from my daughter. One afternoon, I found her sitting in her room, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaking her face. What's wrong, sweetheart? I asked, kneeling beside her. She whispered, Mrs. Karen told me, if you don't pay, we'll have to leave, that they'll take my toys in my room. My blood ran ice cold. Karen hadn't just targeted me anymore. She had gone after my child directly, twisting her innocence into another weapon. That night at dinner, my wife slammed her fork down. We can't live like this anymore. She's terrorizing us. I nodded slowly. Then it's time to fight back. But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. She had pushed every boundary, and if I challenged her now, she'd escalate in ways I couldn't predict. And I was right, because just a week later, Karen's threats stopped being words on paper. They became steel in her hand. It happened on a Sunday, so come it felt like the sky itself had nothing left to prove. The sun stood high and bright. A gentle breeze lifted the smell of cut grass and charcoal from somewhere down the block. My daughter crouched on the driveway in an old t-shirt drawing daisies and suns with stubby sticks of chalk. She hummed under her breath, a tune only kids know, half melody, half daydream. I was in the garage, sorting boxes, the door rolled up, the radio whispering a ball game. Every few seconds, I looked out and saw her small shoulder blades lift and settle as she worked. Peace, the kind that lulls you into believing the worst is behind you. Then a shadow crossed the driveway. Karen. She didn't announce herself. She never did. She moved like a storm front, calm at the edges, violent at the core. White blouse, beige slacks, sunglasses, a clipped stride. In her right hand, a folder thick with papers. In her left, nothing yet. Mr. Miller, she called, stopping just short of the chalk sun. We're past warnings. I stepped to the lip of the garage. This isn't the time. Or the place. It's precisely the place. Her mouth curled. Association property abuts this drive. Your delinquency affects the block. The children should learn that rules have consequences. My daughter looked up, puzzled. Hi, Mrs. Karen. She offered a chalk flower like a peace treaty. Karen didn't look down. Payment. Now. She held the folder out. Papers, highlighted lines, totals in red. I told you. My bank confirmed the check cleared. I kept my voice even measured. If the office lost it, that's on you, not me. Something flashed behind the dark lenses. A twitch. No, Mr. Miller. That's on you. She took a single step forward, the toe of her heel landing on the edge of my daughter's chalk daisy, smearing it into a pale wound. Back up, I said. Calm. Hands out. Palms visible. Daddy, my daughter whispered. It's okay, I told her. Go inside. Stay, Karen snapped, her head tilting toward my child as if she were directing a pet. She needs to see what happens when a household refuses to comply. Neighbors began to gather at their windows. A door opened, then another. A dog barked and fell silent, as if the street itself held its breath. Karen, you need to leave, I said. Now. She shifted the folder under her arm. Her left hand disappeared into her handbag. What came out next changed everything. A pistol. Compact. Matt. Out in the middle of a sunny street like it belonged to the weather. The world narrowed to a tunnel. The game on the radio vanished. The breeze stopped. There's only the gun, black against the pastel chalk, and the silence of 30 witnesses who couldn't believe they were seeing it. Karen's voice floated like ice water. Compliance, she said, is non-negotiable. Karen, I said as calmly as the surge of adrenaline would allow, point that at the ground, or put away. Please. I kept my hands up. There's a child here. She's precisely why we're having this conversation, Karen replied. The pistol lifted an inch. Not a mistake. Not a flinch. A choice. You will not raise a scofflaw. Not here. My daughter's chalk fell, a soft clack on concrete. She went still. Too still, the way kids do when a nightmare forgets to blink. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. I took a half step forward, careful, slow. Karen, look at me. Not at her. This is between you and me. That's where you're wrong, she said. This is between the association and an infection. An infection spread. A screen door creaked across the street. The Thompsons had come out, faces pale. 2 houses down, an older man lifted his phone, hands shaking. Someone whispered, "Call 911." I pressed my voice into a thin line of reason. You're threatening a child. You will regret this. Put it down. Karen tilted her head, as if inspecting a curiosity at a museum. Threatening? She chuckled, dry as paper. I am affirming order. You misunderstand the nature of authority. Another inch. The barrel cast a small, impossible shadow over the chalk sun. Something broke in me. Not patience. Not fear. A deeper cord, whatever binds a parent to the ground when a storm tries to rip them up. I shifted, planting my feet between the gun and my daughter, raising both hands higher. This ends now, I said. Walk away. She smiled then, thin, satisfied. Yes, she whispered. It does. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint at first, then closer, like the neighborhood's conscience racing home. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The street was a photograph. Karen with the pistol lifted, me with my hands up, my daughter's cheek wet with motionless tears. In the distance, tires hissed. A flag snapped. A bird landed on a mailbox and fled again. And then a voice from behind, "I've got it." Mr. Thompson shouted. The door cam everything. The spell cracked. Karen's chin flicked toward the sound. Her sunglasses turned, a black mirror catching the flash of the sun. The pistol tracked a fraction with her eyes. I moved. 2 steps. A pivot. Not a charge, not a tackle, just enough to place my body fully between the barrel and my daughter. I heard my wife shout my name from the doorway, heard my daughter's small gasp as my shadow fell across her. Karen's mouth hardened. Interference, she hissed. Blue light burst across the curb as the first cruiser slid to a stop. Doors flew open. Officers spilled out, hands raised, voices slicing the air. Drop the weapon. Ma'am, put the gun down. Neighbors surged back, a wave of startled bodies colliding with their own lawns. Cameras lifted. Phones panned. The entire cul-de-sac became a witness stand. Karen didn't drop the pistol. Instead, she straightened some flagpole inside her flicking to rigid and lifted her chin with the elegance of a queen accepting applause. Officers, she called, voice suddenly smooth, thank goodness. This man is threatening me. He is delinquent on his obligations and has become belligerent. I feared for my safety. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. The audacity of it delivered with such cool ease stole the air from the day. Gun down, ma'am. An officer barked again, moving sideways, hand steady. Now, she obliged slowly, deliberately, too deliberately. She turned the pistol, pinched the slide, and lowered it to the driveway, the gesture theatrical, as if she were setting down a glass at a gala. Hands where we can see, another officer said. Karen spread her fingers, palms out, smiled delicate and wounded. Of course, I'm the HOA president. You can confirm with dispatch. This man has a record, complaints, violations, threats. She nodded toward the folder, now clutched in the crook of her arm like a Bible. It's all documented. The officer's eyes flicked from me to Karen to the weapon on the concrete. One stepped forward, towing the pistol back with his boot. Another glanced over at my daughter, at my wife, at the cluster of neighbors whose courage ended at their property lines. Sir, the closest officer said to me, voice professional neutral, step back, hands visible. I did, slowly. Every muscle braced against the urge to shout, to shake the street and the sky, and demand the universe pick a side. Daddy, my daughter whispered, it's okay. I said, not believing it. I have video, Mr. Thompson called, stepping into view with his phone raised like a torch. She pointed it at the kid. I saw it. My camera saw it. A flicker crossed Karen's face, gone in an instant, but there, the smallest crack in porcelain. The officer looked between us, weighing tone against facts, calm against panic. He spoke again, measured, we'll sort out statements. Everyone remain where you are. Then, like a bad edit in a cheap movie, the moment tilted. An older officer, late to the scene, strode up, took in the cul-de-sac tableau, and exhaled. Looks domestic, he muttered to his partner. Civil dispute. No shots fired. No shots fired. The words slid across the street like oil, slicking everything they touched. Karen heard them. Her mouth softened into a small, grateful smile, the kind people reserve for waiters who bring extra bread. Thank you, officer, she said, already slipping into victim satin. I was terrified. I stared at the badge, the uniform, the reflected blue in the lenses of Karen's sunglasses, and felt something colder than fear rise in me. A steady, controlled fury. Because I knew then, if the story ended here, the wrong person would walk away unmarked. The officers began to separate the crowd, guiding neighbors back to their lawns, voices clipped and procedural. One took my name. Another asked my wife if we needed medical attention. A third crouched, bagged the pistol, and sealed it with a zip of tape that sounded like a zipper closing on the truth. Karen dabbed at an invisible tear. I'm happy to cooperate, she said. I just want everyone to feel safe again. Safe. My daughter's chalk sun still lay under the shadow of her heels, smeared into a pale bruise across the concrete. Sir, an officer said to me, pen poised, did she point the weapon directly at your child? Yes, I said. Are you willing to make a statement to that effect? Yes. Do you have video? A beat. The neighbors shifted. Mr. Thompson lifted his phone higher. We do, I said, and you're going to watch it. The officer nodded, professional, unconvinced. We'll review it at the station. Behind him, Karen's smile returned, cool, patient, practiced. She thought she could wait us out. That procedure would blur intent, that paperwork would dilute terror into a misunderstanding. Maybe it would have, if not for what came next. Because within the hour, a doorbell camera's clip would leap from a neighbor's phone to a neighborhood group chat, then to a local Facebook page, then to the evening news. And the entire city would see exactly where Karen pointed her power when she thought no one could stop her. But in this moment, on this bright, hateful afternoon, the officers didn't place her in cuffs. They took statements. They collected evidence. They promised to follow up. And then they let Karen walk home. For the first time since the pistol appeared, the street exhaled. People drifted back behind their doors. The sirens faded. The sun slipped a fraction west, smearing the chalk colors into dusk. My daughter leaned into me, small, shaking. I held her, eyes on Karen's door as it clicked shut like the lid of a box. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The real confrontation hadn't even started. The days after the gun incident felt unreal, like living inside a movie where the villain twists every truth until you start doubting your own memory. Karen walked the neighborhood with her chin high, sunglasses fixed, waving sweetly at the same people who had seen her point a gun at a child. And somehow, unbelievably, some neighbors waved back. Misunderstanding, I heard one whisper at the mailbox. She's strict, but she wouldn't hurt a kid. Cops didn't arrest her. So it can't have been that bad, another murmured. My blood boiled, but my fury had to wait. Because what Karen didn't know was that Mr. Thompson's door camera had captured everything, her face, her words, the way the barrel tracked my daughter like prey. That clip was now on my phone, backed up in 3 places, and sitting in the inbox of a lawyer friend who knew exactly how to use it. But first, the HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting to address what they called the incident. I knew this was it. Karen thought she could spin the narrative, crush me in public, and walk away untouchable. But she had no idea what I was bringing to the table. The community center buzzed like a disturbed hive. Folding chairs scraped, whispers passed like static, and every neighbor had shown up, curiosity and fear pulling them into the fluorescent light. At the front, Karen sat behind a long table flanked by two board members who looked more like hostages than allies. Her blouse was crisp white, her hair ironed into perfection, a faint smile frozen on her lips. She looked less like a criminal and more like a senator about to deliver a campaign speech. I took a seat in the middle row, my wife's hand tight around mine. My daughter stayed home, too shaken to sit through another performance of Karen's lies. Karen tapped the microphone, her voice amplified. Neighbors, thank you for coming on such short notice. I know there's been confusion, rumors, but I assure you Willow Creek remains safe, orderly, and strong under our association's leadership. Safe. My jaw clenched. She continued, weaving her false narrative. What happened last week was nothing more than a dispute taken out of context. I feared for my safety when Mr. Miller grew aggressive. I did what any reasonable person would do. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded. Others looked unconvinced. Then she turned her gaze to me. Perhaps Mr. Miller would like to share his version of events. Her smile was razor thin. She expected me to stumble, to rage, to look like the aggressor. Instead, I stood calmly, pulled my phone from my pocket, and walked to the microphone. I will, I said, my voice steady, but I won't use words. The screen at the front of the room flickered to life as I connected my phone. Gasps filled the air as the footage played. Karen storming into my driveway, shouting, drawing the pistol. Her words echoed through the tinny speakers. Compliance is non-negotiable. Then came the moment that froze the room, the barrel tilting toward my daughter, her tiny frame trembling in the sun. Silence swallowed the whole. No coughs, no whispers, just the undeniable truth burned into 100 retinas at once. When the clip ended, I stepped back. This, I said, voice rising, is your HOA president. This is the woman who claims she's protecting our community. This is the person who pointed a loaded gun at a 9-year-old girl because of fees. Mouths hung open. One board member shifted in his seat, sweat beading his forehead. Another scribbled furiously in a notebook, avoiding Karen's gaze. Karen's mask cracked. Her smile faltered. Her fingers drummed against the table. That video, taken without consent, out of context, I cut in. My voice shook now, not from fear, but righteous anger. There is no context where pointing a gun at a child is acceptable. Applause broke. First one person, then another, then half the room. Neighbors who'd once stayed silent now leaned forward, clapping, shouting. Shame, one woman cried. You lied to us. Karen snapped back into the microphone, her voice shrill. This is slander, an orchestrated attack on my character. But the tide had turned. The crowd roared over her, a swell of voices finally unafraid. Police officers, called by someone in the crowd, stepped into the back of the room. Their presence silenced the noise like a needle dropped on vinyl. Ma'am, one officer said firmly, we need you to come with us. Karen jolted to her feet, pointing at me. He's lying. He's manipulating all of you. I am the HOA. Her voice cracked, hysteria bleeding through the polish. She tried to gather her papers, but they slipped from her hands, scattering like snow across the floor. Neighbors watched wide-eyed as the Queen of Willow Creek unraveled in real time. The officers moved closer. One took her arm. She yanked free, stumbling against the table. This isn't over, she shrieked. You'll all regret this. I'll sue every one of you. But the sound of handcuffs snapping shut cut her threats in half. The room erupted, some with cheers, others with stunned silence. For the first time, Karen wasn't the one dictating the rules. She wasn't the one in control. She was just another criminal being escorted out of the community she had ruled with fear. I stood still, breathing hard, watching as the officers led her out into the night. My wife squeezed my hand. "It's over," she whispered, but I shook my head. "Not yet." Because I knew this wasn't the end of Karen's story. Not for us. Not for Willow Creek. Later that night, my phone buzzed with notifications. The video had spread far beyond our neighborhood. Local news anchors replayed the clip, their voices heavy with outrage. Social media lit up with hashtags. Hashtag HOA Karen. Karen wasn't just humiliated in front of her neighbors, she was exposed to the world. But even as the world cheered her downfall, a chill lingered in my chest. Because people like Karen don't go quietly. And I had this sinking feeling she wasn't finished fighting. The morning after the emergency meeting, Willow Creek woke to a different soundscape. No clipped heels on concrete. No clipboard tapping against a forearm like a metronome of judgment. Just sprinklers ticking, birds testing melodies, and somewhere a child's laugh daring to return. The neighborhood had lost its warden. For the first time in a long time, the air felt safe to breathe. But safety isn't the same as justice. I learned quickly how justice moves, slowly, methodically, suspicious of certainty. Detectives called before dawn. Statements were taken again, then again, as if truth needed to be sanded smooth to fit the file. The doorbell footage was copied onto thumb drives, then burned to disk, then uploaded to a secure portal that looked more like a video game start screen than the beginning of a trial. Karen posted bail within hours. Of course she did. Money is the last mask to fall. She emerged from the county building in sunglasses and fury, a silk scarf tied tight at her throat, like she was holding herself together with a knot. Reporters crowded the steps. Microphones lunged. She spoke in the polished cadence of a person who has never believed she could be wrong. "I am innocent. I was in fear for my life. This is a smear campaign by a delinquent homeowner who refuses to follow community rules." The video, playing on loop behind her on a news van screen, disagreed. The DA assigned to our case was a woman named Alvarez, sharp eyes, low voice, the patience of someone who knows that time is her co-counsel. She sat across from us in a small conference room and let the silence go long enough to drain the room of bravado. "Your daughter doesn't have to testify," she said finally, careful with the words. "The video is strong. The neighbors are strong. We'll keep her safe from the stand if we can." My wife's shoulders loosened by a fraction. I felt my jaw unclench. For weeks, I'd slept like a man clinging to a ledge. Now, a hand, calm, professional, had reached down. Alvarez built the story the way good prosecutors do, brick by brick. She didn't just show Karen with a gun. She showed Karen's pattern, petty notices, midnight inspections, the windshield threat, the rising tide of intimidation that crested on our driveway. She found 2 previous complaints the board had buried in minutes and emails, victims who had moved away rather than fight. Karen's control wasn't a moment. It was a career. When Alvarez finished her opening strategy, she looked at me like a surgeon meeting a patient's eyes before the first incision. "We'll charge child endangerment and assault with a deadly weapon," she said. "We'll add menacing. We'll argue intent. The video is clear. The community is ready to speak." I nodded. Ready wasn't the word. I was something harder. Something that bends, but doesn't break. While the criminal case took shape, the HOA board convened a special session. The room where Karen had reigned now felt smaller, the fluorescent lights too honest. People came early and filled the seats in silence. There are many ways to say we were wrong. The board chose the hardest, they said it out loud. We failed, the treasurer admitted, voice tight. We allowed an atmosphere of intimidation. We let one person become the rule instead of following the rules. A murmur of relief moved through the crowd, shame giving way to resolve. Policies were rewritten. Fines were paused. A new compliance committee, 3 neighbors with day jobs and decency, replaced Karen's one-woman show. The bylaws were read like sacred text and amended where they had been twisted into weapons. It felt like opening windows in a house that had been shut for years. When the vote to remove Karen from the board went up, no hands rose against it. The door that had always swung outward on her command, now closed behind her with the quiet finality of a locked cabinet. Irony arrived on schedule. The letter Karen once promised to send to delinquent homeowners now carried her name. The association billed her for legal fees accrued under her leadership. Policy finally cut both ways. The first day of trials smelled like coffee and polished wood and the disinfectant of a place that cleans up after broken things. Karen sat at the defense table in a navy suit too formal for suburban drama, her hair carved into symmetry, her hands folded like the hinge on a jewelry box. She looked smaller without the neighborhood as a stage. Alvarez's opening statement was spare, not a wasted word. This case, she said, is about power aimed like a weapon and a weapon aimed like power. The video played again, now projected large enough to make the room lean back. The stillness whenever the barrel tilted toward the chalk sun was the same stillness I had felt in my bones that day. The jurors' eyes tracked every frame as if watching a snake cross a path. The defense tried to turn the driveway into a theater of misunderstanding. Karen, they argued, had merely brandished a lawfully owned firearm in response to a volatile homeowner. They implied the angle of the barrel was unclear. That perspective lies. That fear is a reasonable excuse for almost anything if you say the word often enough. But video doesn't blink. Neighbors don't forget the shape of terror. Mr. Thompson's voice shook on the stand, but the tremor only made it real. The older officer who had called it a civil dispute testified with a tight jaw, his earlier misstep laid bare. Accountability is a strange kind of mercy. It frees the truth to do its work. Alvarez's last question for me was the shortest. "Where were you standing when the gun was pointed?" she asked. "Between my daughter and the weapon," I said. "Why?" "So the bullet would hit me first." The courtroom was quiet enough to hear the bailiff breathe. Deliberations took less time than it takes to mow a proper Willow Creek lawn. The jury returned with a verdict that unspooled like a held breath. Guilty on assault with a deadly weapon, guilty on child endangerment, guilty on menacing. Karen sat very still while the words arranged themselves into a new future. When the judge scheduled sentencing, she finally looked at me, not with hatred, not with triumph, but with a baffled incomprehension like a magician whose trick has failed in front of a child. At sentencing, Alvarez spoke of community, of how rules are meant to serve people, not frighten them into obedience. The judge agreed. The gavel made a sound I will remember longer than my own address. Bars, time, consequences, the math of accountability. The headline the next morning did what headlines do. It simplified the truth until it felt like a parable. HOA president sentenced after pointing gun at child over fees. My daughter didn't read it. She was too busy drawing a new sun on the driveway. Peace returns in small permissions. The chalk comes out before breakfast. The porch light glows warmer at night. My wife plants a ridiculous number of marigolds. Neighbors wave again and mean it. The new compliance committee stops by with iced tea and a draft of revised bylaws. We talk about speed bumps and community movie nights and the boring beauty of shared life. One evening, the Thompsons will a projector onto their lawn and turn the cul-de-sac into a theater. Kids pile onto blankets. Parents lean into lawn chairs. Someone makes popcorn that tastes like childhood. On the screen, a cartoon cat chases a red that it can never catch. We all laugh at the same moment. The sound feels like a cure. And still, even cures leave scars. When a car door slams too loud, my daughter's shoulders tense, then remember. I kneel beside her and point to the sky. We count the stars. She leans against me and asks if the bad lady is gone forever. She's where people go when they hurt others. I say, and we're where people go when they heal. She nods like she understands, which is to say she believes me. Inside, I open a folder labeled Evidence and move it to a new folder called Closure. Both stay on the desktop. I am not naive, but the name change matters. A week later, an envelope arrives, return address, County Corrections. Inside is a typed letter on lined paper, the words too neat to be sincere. I apologize for any distress. It reads, I hope the community can find order again. No signature, only a typed Karen. Order. The word tastes different now. It doesn't mean obedience. It means belonging. I slide the letter back into the envelope and tuck it behind the new bylaws on our fridge, a private exhibit of what we survived and what we built after. At dusk, my daughter chalks a final figure onto the driveway, a stick family holding hands beneath a lopsided sun. She adds a little house with a crooked heart and grins like she's invented a new flag. We go inside when the porch light clicks on by itself, a simple timer doing what it's supposed to do. Rules serving people. People safe under rules. I lock the door without checking the street. For the first time, the lock clicks like a lullaby. But as I set down my keys, my phone buzzes. A notification climbs the screen. Court filing, notice of appeal. Because some stories refuse to end when justice says they should. And some people can't sleep unless they're trying to pry the door back open. Life in Willow Creek looks different now. Not louder, not wilder, just freer. The cul-de-sac that once shrank under Karen's shadow now breathes like it's learning to smile again. Neighbors linger in driveways. Kids chalk the sidewalks without fear of violations. And every time my daughter laughs, high and unguarded, it feels like a victory that no HOA bylaw could ever take away. On summer evenings, we sit on the porch with lemonade, watching the world move at the speed of forgiveness. My wife plants more flowers than the yard can reasonably hold. I mow the grass without worrying about whether it's half an inch too tall. The ordinary, once fragile, feels extraordinary now. But scars don't vanish. They remind you. My daughter still flinches when she hears a car door slam, though less than before. Each time I kneel, point to the horizon, and remind her she can't hurt us anymore. She nods, believing me more with every sunrise. Karen, meanwhile, sleeps in a place built for bars and regrets. For someone who demanded order, the irony is brutal. She has none now. No clipboards, no bylaws. No one to intimidate but herself in a mirror scratched by time. And yet, the system has its own rules, too. One afternoon, a plain white envelope arrived in the mail. County seal. Legal stationery. I opened it slowly, the paper heavy as if it knew its weight. I read the words twice, 3 times, before setting it down. Karen wasn't done. Even behind bars, she couldn't let go. Control wasn't her habit, it was her heartbeat. That night, as the cicadas sang and my daughter fell asleep with chalk still on her fingertips, I sat in the dark living room staring at the letter. I thought about the gun, about the way the barrel had cast a shadow over the chalk sun, about how close we came to being a headline without a happy ending. And I realized something. The world doesn't hand you final chapters. It hands you battles. Some end, some restart. Some wait for you in envelopes stamped with legal ink. But whatever Karen thinks she's reclaiming with her appeal, she's already lost the one thing she can never get back, power. Because now the whole neighborhood knows the truth. The whole city knows. And soon, the whole world will, too. Some people never learn. But as far as I'm concerned, Karen's war is already over. If you are enjoying my story, so don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment below /